Sorry about that. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Thomas Thompson. I'm the LGBTIQ practice manager for the LGBTI practitioner service here at Court Services Victoria. And if we just flip through to the first page of notes. Before we start, I would also like to undertake an acknowledgement of country. On behalf of us all, I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land of which the Neighbourhood Justice Centre sits on, the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and for those people joining us remotely, the lands on which you all sit on today. We commit ourselves to striving towards reconciliation for all Australians and recognise that reconciliation starts by acknowledging, understanding and educating ourselves on the past in order to work toward making a better future. This land was and always will be Aboriginal land. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Thanks. Shalini, next one, please. Our program came out of the Royal Commission into Family Violence, part of the recommendations. And part of that was an inclusion of targeted services to diverse communities. CSV, or Court Services Victoria, has responded, its response is included but not limited to an LGBTIQ plus pilot, and this was established in 2018. And next slide, Shamini. I am happy to share these slides with everyone at the end if people wish to receive a copy of that. A little bit about our beginnings. So we had a small beginnings at a community-based court, which is the Neighbourhood Justice Centre, and we were under the Perpetrators Intervention Project. And our design was in-person support for applicants or affected family members or victim survivors. There's a wide range of terminology. We would generally refer to people as affected family members and respondents of family violence, or as some people, some services would refer as perpetrators of family violence. So after our humble beginnings, expansion to 2 other courts for in-person services. You need to turn your computer off, Roman, it's still on.
They might need to turn their sound way down.
Oh, please. Apologies about that. Right. Okay, so as I said, we started from humble beginnings. And we've expanded to 2 other courts since then for an in-person service delivery. That includes Heidelberg Magistrates Court and Melbourne Magistrates Court. Part of our pilot was that we had an evaluation undertaken by the NAUS group. So we had rather positive feedback about the service delivery from court users and from people attending the program. And since then, we've had bids for program funding extension or embedding into the statewide service. So to move beyond being a pilot project and embedding within court services as a program. We're currently under a funding extension through to the end of June 2022. So as of, so we have a statewide delivery model as well, and I can talk about that a little bit later, part of our expansion. And what we're doing is we're learning that we can do more, and we are developing ways to offer a fully integrated statewide LGBTIQ approach. And the next page. So, as I said before, we do an in-person support to 3 courts and practitioner remote support to LGBTI plus court users across all of Victoria at this stage. So that expansion came out of COVID, where we learned to develop ways to communicate with people over the phones, effectively provide a service option remotely, because all courts were remote. So we took advantage of that, and we've expanded to offer our service statewide. And we're now currently working with an exponential growth in numbers and how we manage and expand and provide that support. But it's a really great option, and I think it's sort of part of diverse communities, how we take advantage of opportunities that arise, and we further develop our programs and offer our services. So it's been a really, COVID has not been good in some ways, but for the progression of this program, it's been a really great step for us. As I said, we also provide a consultation support to our statewide practitioners. So what that means is whilst we can provide remote support, sometimes people that come into courts that we don't attend in person will request support from a statewide practitioner, where they can be offered remote support from our service, or opt to have direct support from a statewide practitioner who can then take further consultation from us. So part of our program means we regularly present to statewide practitioners, and we talk about knowledge development and issues within the LGBTI community and patterns that we see to better assist that skill development and broader the knowledge base across courts. Also, as part of our role, we aim to contribute towards knowledge development within our organisation across our statewide family violence practitioner service, and contribute towards knowledge development across the family violence sector. So we do this through presentations and information sharing. We're happy to be invited out by organisations to talk about our role, to talk about the court process, to talk about how to undertake referrals to our service, and just have broader discussion. So it's part of the delivery of our service that we undertake. And next page, please, Charlene. So the support provided by practitioners, I've broken this down to 2 sections, one for in-court support and one for remote support to statewide courts. So the LGBTIQ practitioner service offers pre-court support and engagement, at-court support, and post-court support. So what that means is the team will identify matters, LGBTI matters on the list. We may receive referrals from our registrars or our pre-court engagement program. We may receive referrals from service partners and services, and we also accept in-person requests for support. So we will undertake an initial engagement, explain the court process, update the court of any attendance and support needs of court users, and offer our service. So it's not a compulsory engagement with our service, so it's an opt-in, opt-out. At court, we'll meet and greet outside court if we have capacity. So that's one of our, when we attend court in person. And what we found is the reason for that is we found some people within the LGBTIQ plus community have a fear of entering the court building. It's quite a heteronormative space, and that in itself has been a barrier for people to attend hearings. So it's not a usual part of the statewide practitioner service, but we found that at times it's been really important to offer that service. We'll explain the court process on the day, introduce the applicants or the affected family members and the respondents to partner services where required. So that might be legal services, and police prosecutors if need be. We will undertake a risk assessment and safety planning that's required to ensure safety of affected family members. We'll also attend the hearing alongside the court user, and as I said, we will have a respondent practitioner and AFM practitioner to attend to support each party. In post-court support, we will talk with court attendees and we'll explain the court outcome, we'll explain the orders. They've been explained in court, but we quite often find people quite confused. It's quite a hectic time. They don't take a lot on board. So we will sit down and explain that information at the end of the day. And we quite often follow up a couple of days later just to see if people understand what those orders are and what they mean. And we quite often find that, you know, a lot of questions will come at that point in time. So it's a really sort of helpful part of the process. We'll also complete referrals to partner services when required. So that's counselling programs or behaviour change programs, and legal services and a variety of other supports. And part of our post-court support, we will also follow up, undertake follow-up contact to ensure questions are answered and establish if people have engaged with support. For our remote court attendees, we do most of that, except we don't attend court in person. One of the things that the practitioners cannot provide is assistance to complete application forms for a family violence intervention order or a personal safety intervention order. So family violence is someone within your family or family of origin, and a personal safety is someone that is not part of your family. We cannot support the writing or completion of those forms, but we can direct people to where they find them, and we can forward them on for people to complete, and we can direct them to services that may provide some support if that's required. Next page. So some of the learnings that we've come across during our program is we note that there's higher rates of misidentification for LGBTIQ plus matters when attending courts. And we've sort of looked at this quite a bit. It's a bit concerning, it's a bit of a worry, and so each practitioner, when they receive are assigned support, will go through an assessment with their clients, and if there's anything that flags that there's misidentification, both practitioners will communicate with each other, look for consistencies and inconsistencies to better understand if there has been a misidentification of who is the true respondent and who is the true AFM in the matter. For same-sex relationships, we've, I think initially we just assumed that people were making biased assumptions, but over a period of time we've learnt that police who undertake the initial assessment turn up at an incident, it's hectic, there's time pressure, they'll undertake an assessment and they'll come into court. So the police are using the same assessment tools that the rest of us are using in family violence, and what we see when matters come into court when we have brief engagements, it's quite hard to quite often get to the bottom of who the true respondent or who the true AFM is in matters when there's some confusion. Sometimes we'll see people a couple of times before it becomes really clear. So we don't think that there's a general bias of police when attending to same-sex matters in particular, but more that I think in general, when we know that the male is predominantly the aggressor and female and children are predominantly victim survivors or affected family members of family violence. So we think that it's easier just to kind of decide there on attending through knowing that this is the standard presentation. So we believe that, applying that heteronormative lens to same-sex relationships, we're looking at who appears to be the more dominant partner and making those assumptions. For some parts, we've also noticed some differences in assessments around people from diverse communities, and seeing that some cultural assumptions are made there. But in general, we think it's a reflection of how much pressure family violence sector is, the weight of work that's coming through, and that the tools that we have use or that we use and access are sometimes not, there's not enough time to complete a proper assessment or assess things. So we think that may be one of the contributing factors towards misidentification. And at this stage it's a theory, and we're just working on what we see and observations, and engaging with the services that we work with. In the next slide, please. What we have found around misidentification, especially in the transgender and non-binary community, is so usually when we assess for respondents and affected family members, we don't, if we haven't interviewed both parties, we don't see our assessment as valid, because we're not able to drill down a little bit on extra information around consistency of information. So therefore, when we pass on to a community-based service, we always advise if we've interviewed both parties for consistency, so we feel confident about our assessment. But also when we pass on to referral services, we understand that they will spend a lot more time with both the affected family member and the respondent in matters, so they get a better assessment. So we pass on our assessment with the feedback is as you're spending more time with these with the court users, and if you come to a different assessment, please give that as feedback. Because we understand the more we engage, the better we understand, and the better we're able to see a consistency in presentation, because we found that's a really sort of positive aspect of working with our community partners. So back to transgender and non-binary community, one of the things that we have found out is when we receive a L17 or police narrative, as I said previously, we don't generally trust our assessment unless we've interviewed both parties. We've seen a pattern within the transgender and non-binary community when family violence relationships come in, and where the AFM and the respondent is misidentified. So the initial red flag to us is the name of the respondent is their dead name or birth name. That itself is not a strong indicator, it's just a flag. We've spoken to people at court and they'll say, oh, because I haven't changed my name by deed poll, by my birth certificate, or I don't have a driver's license in my name, I've used the name that was assigned to me at birth. And what we undertake is a process of ensuring all court records change to reflect people's name. We're not asking for a birth certificate. We're not asking for name change by deed poll. People's names that they go by and any other name that they've presented to court and before is just an alias. There are plenty of matters throughout the court where loads of people use different aliases. In this area, we will change all names on records. So it doesn't have previously known as, it's just their name will be the name that they advise us. So if people do have police attend their house for a family violence incident, we encourage people to provide the name that they go by, that they live by, provide the pronouns that they go by and they live by, and that will be recorded all the way through the process. So as I said, as a red flag for misidentification by itself, it's not a big flag. But when it comes with the next two topics I'll talk about is the narrative will include the named AFM in a matter using incorrect pronouns throughout the narrative, denying an intimate partner relationship, or making a report as a personal safety intervention order. So they're saying actually we weren't in a relationship. This has a profound impact on their partners if they are transgender or non-binary. Having your relationship denied, having your name, your pronouns incorrectly recorded, and using a name that you don't go by is quite significant. So for us, it's a matter where we understand that even reading the narrative, we have found that we don't even need to interview both parties before we are confident that if these three things show up in a narrative, we're confident that this is a misidentification of true affected family member and true respondent. We've yet to have these sort of three areas show up in a police report where it hasn't been a misidentification. It's a really strong indicator. It's been really interesting to learn about that. And I think that's about the end of my slides. I've probably talked, oh, sorry, I've got an additional slide. I thought I deleted these slides. I haven't. Can I just check for the time?
It's like 1:25.
1:25?
And you've got this one, and I think sorry, that one is
Okay. So I've been racing through the slides. I must be a little bit nervous. I usually talk loads and loads, and I double my time, so that's exciting. So one of the other areas I would like to talk about today is family of origin violence. And this is an area of interest at the moment, and some of the patterns that we're seeing in court. So, you know, family of origin violence can include elder abuse, disability, and that's around the choice of people who have a disability around their choice of accessing their communities that they belong to, and children and young people. So part of that is understanding that with children and young people, how we respond to homophobic abuse within the household. Also understanding that, you know, previously we've considered that as being part of the LGBTIQ plus coming out experience. So even within our own community, I feel there's been a minimising of the this type of abuse and the impact and the response of services to when we see these type of comments and abuse, and how services and family and children services and the family violence sector in general respond. So, and what we've noticed also is family of origin violence when we've had people who come from who are here on visas, immigrating on visas to stay in Australia as family groupings, and when someone reports homophobic abuse within their family, the impact that can have if that continues, and a family violence order that can be breached, and what happens if it's breached and it becomes a criminal conviction, and extended family members are wanting to get citizenship and the impact of that. So what we're finding is there's a lot of pressure for people within this community who are experiencing homophobic abuse within their households to not report it, because the consequences of having people return to countries that aren't safe for them or their families is quite significant. And so, yeah, just we're seeing a few patterns like that within our workplace, a couple of cases that we've worked with our service partners around how we best provide support and how we provide safety and safety planning for people in this area. And when I talk about sort of also the family violence sector, around understanding what informs our current views and our personal biases and assumptions. So within our sector itself, we've been exposed to the marriage equality debate recently. So that was where we had leaders within the community, including leaders of both our main political parties, where they've condoning of LGBTIQ prejudice, saying, you know, this community doesn't deserve equality or shouldn't have equality. So we're just talking a few short years ago, the impact of hearing leaders across Australia make such negative comments. I always say to people working in the sector, that has an impact on us. So that might have an impact on our own views and how we respond to that. That's not okay. It's not okay to be in the sector, to be holding views like that are discriminatory. And however, just, you know, we quite often talk about the impact of having leaders across Australia that in such recent times that have been so negative about the LGBTI community and the impact on that and how people feel about approaching services. So challenging our own biases and our own experiences of that and within our broader service sector. And that's, oh, sorry. And this last one is just sort of a diagram of what we'd like to achieve within our program when we meet service users, ensuring that there's a safe, inclusive court experience, that access to targeted advice and referrals pre and post court attendance. So that means about removing barriers where we can, being as supportive as we can, promoting accessibility for LGBTIQ plus people, but for broader communities, diverse communities. When we look at one area of service delivery, we found quite often we're able to apply that to other areas. So the great part of being part of a pilot project, looking at a diverse community is how we can affect change for the next pilot project that comes out, and how we can improve those processes, and how we can contribute towards that broader education and support the progression of our own organisation. And you know, and one of the things that we always like to make sure we keep at forefront is how we support victim survivor-led recovery, how we promote the experiences of victim survivors in the court space, how we make sure their voices are heard, and how we can continuous improvement within our own organisation. And how we can better support applicants in connecting with services. So part of our program delivery is how we review engagement, how we seek feedback and critique, how we develop part of our making sure we follow up with court users, checking in if there was a barrier to accessing the services referred to, because sometimes we'll find that there's been an unintentional barrier and people have just sort of slipped off the radar or stopped engaging. So just providing that additional support and bridging that gap, making sure there's a really good handover. And support engagement to targeted programs for respondents who use violence against LGBTIQ plus people. And for us, what that means is as we're a voluntary engagement service and people can decline support, I would say most respondents that come through to our program say, no, I just need counselling or mediation. Now, we quite often don't have enough time to drill down and work through better understanding respondents' needs or promoting that kind of engagement with a behavioural program. But what we have found is with our referral services that they are better able to spend that time and have that time where they can drill down and support respondents to consider engaging on a voluntary basis in behaviour change programs. We think our partner services are really good at that. It's a very exciting part of knowing that we can hand over to services that have such a thorough follow-up. And just the last slide. And so basically, this last slide is how you can contact our service. We accept referrals through that email inbox, through calling us through the NJC Centre and the Neighbourhood Justice Centre. So that can be a verbal referral, it can be an email referral. We try to make that as easy as possible for court users and for services, so we don't make that too complex. So part of that referral might be, I've got someone who wants to talk about applying for an intervention order, or I've got someone who's in court and they don't know much about that and they've got a court matter coming up, and we will touch base with those people, engage and provide support. Any questions?
I'll just stop recording.